Is it unique drink driving in that the judge has no discretion on sentencing, I suppose?
Yeah, it's one of those ones that they don't. And you can see it on their faces sometimes, you know? Like you'll often hear them say, I've got no discretion. If the person pleads guilty or they're found guilty.
Nearly like an apology.
Almost. Like, I have no discretion, I have to do it. Like, and sometimes, like, I think that, like, the system on the continent is like, you know, it's not an automatic ban. You may be fined a hell of a lot of money, but you can, you know, in certain circumstances, you can stay on the road. Like, most of the people who get arrested for drink driving, they're not involved in any accident, and there's been no injury to anybody or damage to property. Like, that's the vast majority of cases. They're stopped at checkpoints or they've been pulled over. And this is not to excuse it, obviously. You know, we all have an interest in driving on the road and not being collided into by people who are drink driving. Everybody understands and agrees with that. Even people who get arrested for drink driving accept that. But I think that really our system is quite severe because it doesn't allow any discretion to the judge at all. I mean, there really should be a system whereby if there's no accident, assuming there's no accident or no injury, there should be a system whereby you get one shot at getting a substantial fine, and the fine should be, I'd say, you know, a percentage of your salary. That way, then the rich and the poor are hit at by the same ratio. You can't buy your way out of it. So if you're earning €1 million a year and you get fined 10% of your salary, that's 100 grand. And same if you're earning less. That money then should go to an organization that's set up to look after people who have been the victims of drink drivers. Right? That money goes to that society to help them. Some people have been very badly injured, who've lost loved ones. You know, that's a better use of people's money. And you know, if I was on €1 million a year, and if I was given that option, I would pay that 10% if it meant I would stay on the road, but I'd only get one shot at that. If we get caught again, that option is gone. And I think that would be a sensible thing. I think most people would agree that's a sensible thing. Now, that's only if you haven't injured anybody and there's been no accident. That's, if there is that situation, if you have obviously injured someone, that plainly you don't qualify. But I think that's a more sensible approach, rather than this penal approach that we have where we're going to put you off the road if you're found guilty or plead guilty. And that then leads people into this, we channel them down this route where they've got no choices. You have to contest, otherwise you're going off the road. And so the courts filled up with drink driving trials up and down the country. And each one of them is taking an hour and a half, whatever it is. And there could be 4 or 5 on one day. And they will all be reached, so they'll be adjourned again. But if you gave those people who were not involved in any accidents and no injuries a chance to pay a substantial sum of money, they would do it. They would do it. If it meant that they could stay on the road, they would do it. It's a far more sensible approach, I think.
It makes total sense
yeah.
to me. What's it like in court then, you know? Like, because for most people, we see courtroom dramas on TV and it's, you know, portrayed in a certain way. What's it actually like when you go into court for a case?
It's quite dignified, really. It's not like TV. TV is drama. I mean, if you went into a court anywhere and filmed it, people wouldn't watch it because it's kind of boring. Because it's, you know, the same kinds of cases coming up all the time. And first of all, judges don't have gavels like they have on TV. They're not whacking the table. That doesn't happen. That doesn't even happen in America. Like, I don't know where the gavel came from, but it's certainly not a UK thing, and it's not an Irish thing. And it's kind of, there was some parts in America, but even now they don't have gavels. But it's all for drama. But in courts over here, no. But people's perceptions of courts are based on what they've seen on TV. So they'll come into court and they'll think that the judge is going to scream at them or shout at them, or they'll be accused of lying, or there'll be someone sticking a finger in their face and just badgering them, because that's what they're used to watching on TV. But it doesn't happen like that in court. Most of the time, people complain they can't actually really hear what's going on because people are speaking in kind of lower tones, and it is. Yeah, it's much more, I suppose, decorous. It's much more dignified, but it's still a place that people don't know much about. So their only information about court comes from TV, and TV is not real. some elements are, but most of it it's overblown and quite dramatic. Court tends to be not like that. And there's also the other thing too, when you go into court, like people, they become frazzled sometimes because they have this idea what it's going to be like. It's going to be like this, like TV or whatever else, and they sit down, and then there's all these other things happening around them. There's prison officers filing left and right into a custody area. There's guards coming up and down and going to the witness box and coming out. And there's solicitors standing up and sitting down. The judge is talking to somebody else. And all of that stuff that they hadn't really expected is kind of overloads their senses sometimes. And they can't hear anything. And, they'll stare at the judge. Not even, they're listening, but they can't hear because it's just too much. It just kind of overloads their system. And then they come out of the court and they'll sometimes say to you, what happened there? They don't know. I mean, the case I had there a few months ago, she was acquitted of drink driving. And the judge said, I'm dismissing the charge. And I looked over to her and I nodded at her and she was like nodding back at me with a vacant expression on her face. Like she couldn't hear what he was saying, or she did hear it, but it didn't meant nothing. It was all too much. It wasn't until we went outside the door and she asked me what happened there. And I said, well, it's been dismissed. It's gone. Then she understood. But inside there, even though she could hear what he was saying, it just meant nothing to her because all of these people, this environment is totally alien, had overloaded her sensory capabilities. And so that even though she was being told it's gone, that the case is dismissed, she was just nodding as if she was like in a stupor. It didn't register. So it's not a place you go into on your own, but it's not like TV either. It's not some crazy place where people are screaming and roaring. That's kind of laughable. That would never happen.
What advice would you give to somebody who's going into court, for drink driving or for another charge, maybe?
Well, courts are not really places that you should go into on your own if you don't know. I mean, oftentimes people will tell me they were talking to their friend or their buddy or some know-it-all in work who's got an opinion on everything, and he's telling them what they should do and all this kind of stuff, and they're taking advice from this person. And these people who are giving advice, they've never been to court, but yet they've got an opinion about court, and they're advising people. And people will base their actions on what they've been told by this person who's never been in court. The amount of times you hear that, and like you're if you go into court representing yourself, and some people do it. Sometimes they do it because they can't afford a lawyer, and I get that. But in most cases, judges will appoint a solicitor on legal aid to help them if the case is one that merits it. But they'll always tell them, you should talk to a lawyer. Because people sometimes, when they go into court, if they decide to represent themselves, if they're asked a question by a judge, they'll blurt out a whole pile of stuff, and judges will say, you should get a lawyer because you may say something that harms your own interests.